Congruent triangles, these are identical triangles, so it's when you have two triangles and all the angles are equal, all of the sides are equal, everything about them is identical. So when we have congruent triangles, we write it as triangle ABC is congruent to triangle. Now be careful, you have to name them in order. So A corresponds to X because they're both the same size, B corresponds to Y, and C corresponds to Z. Okay. Now there are 4 tests to prove congruent triangles. All of these are tests you should have seen before, so we're going to go through them quickly. You've got side, side, side. So that's when all 3 sides of one triangle are exactly the same as all 3 sides of another triangle, so if they've given you the lengths. You've got side, angle, side, so that's where 2 pairs of sides and the angle that's in between them. So looking at those pictures up the top, if you were given that BA was equal to YX and AC was equal to XZ, you would need to know that the angle at A was equal to the angle at X. Okay, so they have to be in between the sides. Next one you've got is angle, angle, side. So 2 angles and 1 pair of corresponding sides. Now that side can be any of them as long as it's in the same position on both triangles. Then you can use angle, angle, side. And then we have right angle, hypotenuse, side. So into right angles, if you also know their hypotenuses on one other side, then you know that they're equal. Or congruent, sorry. So pause the recording and write that one down. Okay, so just a reminder of how exactly you prove this. When you're looking at your triangles that you're given, you have to look at what information do we have. So we're being asked to prove that triangle ABC is congruent to triangle EDC. So there's a couple of pieces of information that we have on there. The first one, quite obviously, being that the sides AC is equal to CE. And then you need to think about, well, what other information do I have? I can't use side, side, side because I only know one of the sides. Okay, I don't have a right angle triangle. So if I've only got one side and I've got no right angles, the only option that I really have to look for is angle, angle, side. So looking at that diagram, can I find 2 equal angles? Well, yeah, you should be able to, hopefully. So a bit of a review. When you've got 2 lines, AE and BD, that cross each other, then they create vertically opposite angles. So the first thing we have is the triangle ACB is equal to, angle DCE. And then you must give your reason still. So every one of these requires a reason. So the reason that we know that they are equal is because they are vertically opposite. So one of the things that's a good habit to get into is to then say, well, what is it that I just proved? Was it a right angle? Was it a hypotenuse? Was it a side? Was it an angle? And we have just proven an angle. So I tend to write that in a different colour just so that we know exactly what it is we've done, because at the end you have to tell me which test you used, and if you get that wrong you lose marks. So keep track of what it is you're proving. So we've just proved the vertically opposite angles. The next thing we can look at is the fact that AB is parallel to DE, and when we have parallel lines cut by a transversal we get alternate angles, which is what we have here. So you've got a choice, you can use either, but I am going to use angle ABC is equal to angle EDC. Now the reason for this one is because they are alternate angles, and it's not just enough to say that they're alternate angles, because alternate angles aren't equal unless the lines are parallel. So you also have to say that AB is parallel to DE. Okay, so again, I've just proven another angle. So I've got my angle, I'm heading towards angle, angle, side. So now I need to prove the side. In this case, you don't have to prove them, they're given to you. So it's just AC is equal to EC. And for that we say given, because they gave us that information. It's not something that we had to come up with ourselves. That was information that was told to us. And that's our side. So what we have there is angle, angle, side. So once we know that, we can say, well, therefore, triangle ABC is congruent to triangle. Now have a look. Which angle is it that corresponds to A? Well, in this case, it's E. And then the angle corresponding to B is D. The angle corresponding to C is obviously C. But you must then state your reason. So the reason we know this is the angle, angle, side test. That's what we use those acronyms for. So this one's a little bit more difficult. We're being given a parallelogram. They're telling us that AX is equal to CY, and we're being asked to prove that XD is equal to YB. Now the way you're going to do that is by proving that the triangles ADX and CYB are congruent, because if they're congruent, then the matching sides have to be equal. That's the definition of congruency. So if you look at the triangles that we're considering, we've got ADX and CYB. Well, we already know one side. We can't possibly use the side, because we're being asked to prove that two of those are equal, so we don't have that piece of information. But AD is going to be equal to BC. Because it's a parallelogram, the opposite sides of a parallelogram are equal. So we have two sides, so we've got side, all we need is the angle. Well, it's a parallelogram, so the angles at A and C have to be equal as well. So we've got side, angle, side. So let's have a look at what that proof's going to look like. So because it's side, angle, side, that's the way I'm going to set it out. It just makes it easier. Very easy for kids to get stuck in this circle and think they've proved something. Then when you go through, they've missed a piece of information. So try and set it out the way you're meant to be proving it. So if you're proving side, angle, side, prove a side and then an angle and then a side. If you're proving angle, angle, side, then do an angle, then a side. Just double check your own work. So the first piece of information I'm going to use is the piece that was given, and that's the fact that AX is equal to CY. So that's given, and that there is my side. Okay, so then I want to look at the angle. So as we said, angle DAX is equal to angle. Now think about this. What matches with D? Well, D is matched with B. So it's BCY. Now how do we know that? Because the opposite angles of a parallelogram are equal. Now be really clear about what piece of information you're using to prove this, guys. Okay, don't leave the marker questioning whether or not you actually know what it is you're trying to do. So that's our angle. So we've got side, angle, and now we're back to side. So in this case, we've already used AX, so now we need to use AD. So AD is equal to CB. Now why is that? Well, that is because the opposite sides of a parallelogram are equal. Okay, and again, write down what it is you've just done. Well, I've just proven a side. So there's my side, angle, side. So it's just a way of double checking that, yeah, no, I'm right. I know what I'm doing. I've done it properly. Okay, so then a summative statement. So therefore, triangle ADX is congruent to triangle what? So A corresponds to C, D corresponds to B, X corresponds to Y. And how do I know that? Well, because I used the side, angle, side test. But is that what we've been asked to do? They didn't ask us to prove that the triangles were congruent. They asked us to prove that the sides were congruent. So we then say, therefore, XD is equal to YB because they are corresponding sides of congruent triangles. That's the sorts of things that we're going to be using our congruent triangle stuff for. You won't often be just asked to prove that they're congruent triangles. There'll be a next step. So if they're congruent, prove that the angles are equal, prove that the sides are equal. Well, they'll be asking you to prove sides or angles are equal, and you'll have to know to go back and do the congruent triangles to prove that. So that's what you need for exercise 4.4. Don't do a lot of question 1. I really need you to focus on the proofs. So from question 2 to 10, they're the ones that you need to focus on. Good luck, and I'll see you in class.